All right, you bunch of lucky people. Today, I'm going to tie you a regular old school woolly bugger. It's come to my attention that I don't have a plain old woolly bugger on this website and or YouTube page, so we're gonna twist one up. And I'm going to start with a 4x long streamer hook, so 4 eye lengths longer than standard. This happens to be a Daiichi 2220. A Tiemco 5263 is a 3x long hook, and that would work fine as well. But I tend to like to tie these on a little bit longer hook. And what I'm going to do to start with, I've got a size 6 here in the vise. I'm going to take some 25 thousandths lead wire, and just from the spool here, I'm going to grab one end of it, and I'm going to start wrapping, just in front of the point. It really, it'll vary with how heavy you want your fly to be. I tend to like buggers to be pretty heavy. And I'll wrap lead, just one turn in front of the other, up to, I'm going to say 20% of the shank short of the hook eye. And I'll break that end off, and then this back end I'll just finish off those last couple wraps. So I've got however many wraps that is. Somebody will count them and put it in the comments. There's always that guy. It's that many wraps. It's about that much lead. So now I'm going to take some 6/0 black unithread. This is 135 denier, so fairly coarse. And 3/0 monocord would work fine here too, Danville monocord. And what I'll do here is I'm going to start this thread just up here behind the eye. And I'm going to wrap back to the lead, over that tag end. And if I've got any extra, I'll trim that tag end out. But I like to build a little bit of a thread dam on either end, and I don't really need to taper it up quite so smoothly as you might be tempted if you were going to be doing a dubbed body. But I just want to anchor that all down in place. And then I'm going to wrap all the way back to the bend of the hook. And once I get there, I like to, at this point, put a little shot of head cement down that thread base over that lead. You kind of just smear that around with your finger. You could wait patiently for it to dry, but I've never done that, so I'm not actually sure how that works. So now I'm going to take a Marabou feather, Marabou blood quill. This is just a standard Marabou feather, and I want to look for one that's pretty fluffy. So let me get a good example and a not so great example. So this feather, I'm going to tie you a purple one. You can see it has very thick flues, a lot of volume to it. You can see when I bunch that up for a tail, it's going to make a nice full tail. This feather has got much sparser flues, and when I bunch this up, it's going to make kind of a stick tail. I've seen them tied both ways. I've fished them both ways. I like the more full tail. It moves better in the water. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this feather, and typically I'll take my dubbing brush and I just put it on my pant leg and run the brush through it, and that'll kind of fluff that up. Sometimes they're matted down from the dyeing process. And I'll cut the bottom third or so off the feather. So I've got something like this. And then I'll grab that butt end and just bundle the tip up so that I'm going to wet those just a bit. So I've got a nice little bundle, and I'm going to take that bundle and measure it about a shank length long. So I'm going to go just a bit shorter there, about a shank length long. And then I'm going to set that point in at the bend, and I'm going to anchor it down with a band of thread, like so. Now I like to use the butt end of the Marabou to kind of help build the body a bit. So I'm going to lift the butt end, and I'll bring the thread up to just off the end of the lead and tie it down again there. Then I can trim the front end out. And I usually wet my fingers and kind of stroke that back, and I'll just spiral wrap back over that Marabou. And you can see how that negates the taper that the lead had in there. And go over that a couple of times. Now while I'm here, just for the sake of showing you, I'm going to add a little bit of flash. And what I've got here is some like navy blue crystal flash. If I can get a hold of it here. And I'm going to get, I probably got half a dozen strands here. Something like so. That's probably too many. I'm going to say 3 or 4. Yeah, let's do 4. Like so. And I'm going to take this. These are, about twice the shank length at least. It'd be okay if they were longer. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to catch them and let my thread roll them to the far side. So I caught them at the middle of their length, and I'm going to leave 4 of those strands on that side. And then on this side, I'm going to pull these front ends back and down, and I can sort of align them with the side of the tail. So I've got flash on either side of the tail. And those just happen to be just about the right length. That was not predetermined. If they were longer, I would trim them just short of the just a little shorter than the end of the tail, no longer. And I tend to like them at random lengths. I don't like them all cut square. It's a little too rigid for me. So now I'm going to take a piece of copper wire, and really the color of the wire you use here doesn't make any difference. It's barely going to show. But you can see we've got just a little bit of a divot here at the back of the fly. That's where the lead ended. So I'm going to tie the wire in with my thread hanging at the bend, and I'm going to put that piece of wire right up to the end of that divot and anchor it in place there. Go back and forth over it a couple of times and just anchor that down tightly. And I just tied that in here on my near side of the hook. So I'll drape that back and hook that in my material clip. And then I'm going to take some chenille. And I just dug through 2-gallon Ziploc bags of chenille looking for some medium-sized purple, and I didn't have any. So I'm going to use 5. And this is woolly bugger chenille, which has got a little bit of flash in it. Regular rayon, cotton chenille, any of that will work. And actually with this fat body on this is going to work nicely. So what I want to do is if you strip the end, you can pull some fibers out and have just a bare white core left. And what I want to do is catch that core right at the end of the lead and then wrap over it right back to the base of the tail. You can see that's just taking steps to even things up. And I'll bring my thread back up to my index point. Now again, at this point, I used to tie these for guys that, for a bunch of old guys. So I'm always putting head cement on these. Those old guys are the best complainers if a fly came apart. So I put a little shot of head cement down there before I wrap this chenille. So I'm going to start to wrap the chenille back here at the bend, just one turn in front of the other. Just nice concentric turns. Think of it like the wire on a brassy or a copper john. Right up to the end of that taper. When I get there, I'm going to pull it up and tie it off with a couple turns of thread, just behind my index point. And that index point can be left a little long. You can leave yourself a little more room than you think you might need. You can see when I trim that off, there's some little stubs that are left up there. I'm going to clean that up just a bit. I'm not super worried about it because I've got some thread work to go in there yet. But you can see we've got a nice fat body. So now I'm going to take a saddle feather. And this is a grizzly feather dyed purple, just matching. You could, obviously do whatever colors you want. But you can see that this feather's got a nice taper to it. So this is going to create hackle that is bigger at the front and tapering down toward the bend. So what I want to do here is that down here at the bottom is I'll trim the fluff off, and then I'm going to trim just a couple little bristles on the bottom of that feather. So I just leave those little bristles there. And I want to tie this in with the inside of the feather toward the hook, just up here behind the eye. And I want to anchor that good and tight, like so. So now I'm going to take this feather, and I'm going to begin to wrap it. And as I wrap, I want the outside of the feather facing forward. Hopefully this feather is going to cooperate. He is. And what I want to do is I want to start with a couple tightly spaced turns, maybe even 3 tightly spaced turns there at the front. And then I'm going to start to spiral the feather back, just evenly spaced turns, back toward the bend. And you need a longer feather than you think you do because that's a pretty fat body. So you're wrapping that hackle around a fairly large arbor. When I get back here to the bend, you can see I'm holding the tip. I'm going to pick up my wire. I let that get a little slack. I'm going to tighten that up. Holding the tip, I'm going to pick up my wire and catch the end of the hackle with my wire. So now I can let go of that. You can see that tip sticking up right here. Now I'm going to spiral my wire forward through the hackle. And the best way to do this is don't make any special considerations for the hackle. Just wrap it evenly all the way back up to the hook. I even take a wrap through those packed tight wraps at the front, right up to the eye, and then I'll tie the wire off. And I want to sweep that hackle back out of the way there and get that wire anchored. Then I can helicopter the end of that wire to break it off. Now, before I forget, I'm going to come in and trim the tip of that feather out. Now to sweep this front hackle collar back a bit, I'm going to just make a triangle with my fingertips and my thumb. I'm going to sweep all that hackle back, and I'm going to build my thread head up onto the base of that hackle. And I find oftentimes if you pinch all the way around any sort of soft hackle collar, you can kind of crush that stem. You can see how nicely that swept back. And you can continue that right on down the hook, and that'll sweep that hackle back even more. What that does is it rolls the stem so it kind of buries down in the chenille and creates a nice little angle to the hackle. So now I'll come in and whip finish, just up here behind the eye, just 2 or 3 turns, 3, 4 turns. Call that good. Come in and nuke my thread out of there. And since we're doing it, we're going to put a little shot of head cement on this one as well, just so no old guys can complain. I say old guys like I'm not one of them. I probably do my fair share of complaining myself, now that you mention it. But anyway, guys older than me complain even more. Some rate of return there. But at any rate, that's your standard old-fashioned woolly bugger. Now, you can tie the hackle in by the tip and palmer it forward over the body. I honestly think that makes a prettier fly. The feather sweeps back better, but it is not as durable. If that hackle breaks, your fly's done. You end up with just a little collar at the front, so I want something that'll reinforce that. And you can see that wire just barely shows. And that's bright copper wire, brand new spool. Had I used black or even purple wire, that would have blended in a little bit better, but of no consequence. That's sort of the idea. Straighten my flash out there, but that's him. That's your woolly bugger. So if you came to see that, all your dreams have come true. That's what I'm here for. Making your dreams come true. There's a woolly bugger. Hope you guys enjoyed that. I'm Charlie Craven. Thanks for watching.